So what's up, everyone? I'm Denzel, as you already know, and I'm here with Kyler Keeley.
What's up, guys?
I'm also here with Jolene. I just met her. And we were actually supposed to be working on a podcast for Kyler's upcoming podcast channel. For those of you who don't know about it, make sure to check out our video interviewing Kyler Keeley of Psych Diner. And I was just like, you know what, we have a little bit of extra time. We actually didn't get to record the podcast today, some technical difficulties, but we got an iPad over here and we got two psych majors. I'm not a psych major, I'm a communications major, but they also know about, the MBTI type, psychology, all of that, and they are intuitives. We also have Jamila over here, but she's taking a timed quiz, so she might hop in and out. So this is a very spontaneous speaking video, and we just wanted to hop on camera and say some things.
Talk some stuff about personality.
Yes, I'm here with two NE users, so I think that this would be very entertaining for not only me, but for you guys as well. So let's just break ice. Go.
Okay. Well, so he's talked about me being an ENFP. I am not one for typing necessarily. These two are. They'll talk to you and in 3 minutes they'll be like, oh, you're this. And they're very, very accurate. It's kind of annoying.
I've typed my whole entire home.
Yeah, but was it correct?
Oh yeah.
Did you ever mess up?
I mean, I might mess up just a little bit, but then I instantly correct it. I make sure to go to that person and be like, no, this is actually. I've told a few that what they had was wrong.
That's good. I like doing that.
Shut them down. Right? Nope, you're wrong. Now
that's what the test gave you. Let me explain why the test is wrong. You guys have seen my video. 65% of your test results are inaccurate.
And retest reliability. No one acknowledges that. If you take a Myers-Briggs test or whatever kind of test you want, most personality tests, if you take it again and again and again and again, you won't get the same response. And we talked about this on the first podcast.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to hear a little bit more about, test retest, check out my channel, Psych Diner. And we can talk about it a little bit here, but the test retest reliability is not accurate. You ask research professors, and they'll tell you not to rely on the results that you get from. Now, personality professors might differ.
Yeah.
Because they're biased. But
yep.
Research professors will shut that down. They're like, Myers-Briggs is cool and it helps in a corporate setting, but it's not very accurate with the test retest reliability. And that's necessary. But it's all we have to go off of right now, which is where I come in. And I've kind of come up with my own personality theory in typing. Because unlike these two, and typing is cool. Typing is awesome. Typing helps make friends, helps communication. But very short term, because personality, I believe, grows and changes and acts like a living being that works with our conscious and subconscious. And as a response, you can grow. You possess all qualities. So the E and the I, the S and the N, the F, the N, and the T, the P, and the J. You have all of that in my theory. It's called the Patrick Edward theory, and it differs in levels. That's kind of the broad definition of it, but it's used to analyze personality disorder, or at least theoretically could be used to analyze personality disorder, and type people very quickly, very accurately, and in the moment, which is very important. I don't believe you can type someone and just keep that title on them. You type them, if you type them, you type them in the moment, and this helps it more accurately. So right now it's very much a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
But it's going to be entering the first stages of research development next semester. So if you guys are interested in keeping up with that as well, Patrick Edward theory, you could probably do that through Psych Diner. No telling right now if that's going to be what kind of content I'm going to produce on that quite yet, because again, early stages of development. But if you are interested, my Twitter, Facebook, check that stuff out. So.
So would you say that you don't see yourself as an NFP anymore? Or you're you identify with being ENFP for now, but then tomorrow you might be an INTJ. How exactly are you going about this?
Right. So it's not just so I make sure, I don't lead people astray. It's not like your personality can change over the day. You have a solid in this theory, in the formula I established, you have a primary type. Right. Okay, so you can type. There's such thing as typing, and you have one that's preferred. So for me, let me make sure I get this right, and if I get it wrong, you can correct me, which would be really funny if you corrected me on my own formula. But for me, it would be capital N, which is extroverted extroverted intuition, with lowercase f, which is introverted feeling. That is my primary type. That's my go-to. That's where my personality rests, basically. And then you have a primary and secondary functions, and just to spare y'all detail, because it's very not well researched yet, it's all theoretical. You have branches of functions. You have a social function, a primary preferred function, and they all relate and they all work with other functions. And so it kind of shows the communication between each. So technically, according to Myers-Briggs, I am an ENFP. Now that's not, I'm not saying I'm not, because that's how I behave 98% of the time. But I am, my test retest on those, like I said, is not reliable. However, it's like 49% of the time I am an INFP, 51% of the time I'm an ENFP. A lot of people will label that ambivert.
Yeah.
And no, I don't believe in ambiverts.
That's good. You are saved.
Such an easy answer. I'm both.
Right? Because you don't have to think about it.
Oftentimes when I'm testing people and I ask them if they're more logical or emotional, they're like, well, I'm both. And I'm like, okay, so
No, you're
feeler.
Got it. But it shows how my extroverted tendencies work with my introverted habits. I guess this is a good way of putting that. So I, from time to time, pull away. I like to recharge, watching Netflix, chilling by myself, or with one good friend or a book. Now that's a very stereotypical way to describe an introvert. But it's true that I have introverted tendencies. However, I'm typed ENFP. You don't have extroverts and introverts according to my function, or according to my formula and according to my theory. You have personality growth. You have preferences, but your personality taps into each function. And you are actually capable of feeling is a bad word to use that, experiencing every function introduced by Myers-Briggs. So it's not something that switches Myers-Briggs and says Myers-Briggs is wrong. It says Myers-Briggs is right, but you're not understanding it correctly. Which is also a very blunt way to put it, because I'm only switching a very small amount. But in the way that it communicates, you have it all, and they work in relation to each other, and you have preferred and unpreferred, but they're all present. So that's kind of what that is. It's very hard to describe right now, because it's very loose. No research behind it yet. It's just a theory.
Well, you're definitely an NE Dom. And I mean, the answer that I usually give for such things, especially like someone like you who types both as ENFP, INFP, first of all, that's better than me. Like, the last 2 times that I've taken the test, I've typed out as an INFP. And it's like, oh, well, that's definitely not what I am, but okay. And I think that it's very interesting that you are, because I've told you that I think that everyone is most developed when they start to look more like, so extroverts, they're developed when they start to look like their introverted counterpart, and introverts are more developed when they start to look at their extroverted counterpart, because now they've developed their introverted functions or their extroverted functions. Mm-hmm. And so you being an ENFP, first of all, ENFPs are known as the most introverted of the extroverts, so that's already something. And then second of all, NE doesn't have to do with people, but with ideas, with theories, with perceptions, and all of that type of thing. And so literally you can be like just exploring Lynchburg. We live in Lynchburg. I know, strange name. That's where we go to school. But you could be like driving around Lynchburg, and you can be using your NE with nobody else in your car, because it's like exploration. Mm-hmm. But then also your FI is developed. And I think that because you spend time in your FI, like with journaling, you use your NE to like gather all of this data and like do the research that you do and everything, you need to spend time like alone in order to like gather your thoughts.
Yeah.
So that inevitably makes you more introverted or develop your introverted side. But I guess that's where the third and the fourth function come in. So even though your dominant and your auxiliary function can somehow seem to like level out, this is where the ambivert thing breaks apart. Your tertiary and your inferior function will never equal out. So a lot of people, like Personality Hacker, they call the tertiary the 10-year-old, and then they call the inferior a 3-year-old. Now, your dominant and your auxiliary are both adults. So if mommy and daddy, are around the same age, or, technically you can never really catch up with somebody's age. Like, hey, you're 22, I'm going to be 22 soon, and you just
See you there.
Yeah, it won't be like that. But if it gets to that point, like, like your dominant and your auxiliary could come to an extent. Your dominant will always be more than your auxiliary, but your auxiliary can catch up like just enough to where it's like, oh, I can't really tell if you're an extrovert or introvert, which one you're leading with between those two. However, you can always tell like, okay, but your tertiary is like your tertiary and your inferior are so far apart in age or in development that you'll always be able to tell them apart. So with you, all that to say, I definitely see TE with you more than I see SI.
Mm-hmm.
And TE is all about like, effectiveness, all about pretty much like going after whatever you like, whatever you want. You live more in the external world, and that's also the way that I define like extroversion versus introversion. A lot of people say things like it's where you get your energy from. I don't think that's a good definition, and I've discussed that with people, and they also agree with me, because if we're being honest, I don't get my energy from being around people. I get my
Right.
energy from being by myself and everything, and then I have the energy to go out and be with people.
Right.
But I'd rather say it's where you focus your energy. Jamila, being an ISFP, she focuses her energy on her internal world. She really focuses on whatever perceptions that she has, and whatever type of like values that she's building, all of that. I focus my energy on the external world, being an extrovert and everything. So although I get my energy from being by myself, while I'm by myself, I'm thinking, okay, when I go back out, I'm using all this energy to push right back out and help the world in that case. And I think for you, you go and you recluse, is that the word, recluse? You recluse yourself to be by yourself and everything. I think that's,
I don't know.
I don't know. I probably read it from somewhere. But you pretty much, you isolate yourself and you go be by yourself and all of that. And people would probably say that you're an introvert for that reason. Because, you like alone time. Well, it's not really that simple. Because then, once you're spending that time alone, you're focusing more on how to bring things into fruition. Because the external world is what's more real for you.
Yeah.
For every extrovert, the external world is what's more real for them. So a lot of ENTJs are going to think, and I've actually ran into a lot of ENTJs who swear that they're INTJs, and it's like, you're not. And me and Heidi are actually going to be talking about this on our live stream on Friday, the most common mistypes. But ENTJs swear they're INTJs because TE, kind of like NE, does not have to do necessarily like with people, but with getting things done.
Right.
And so an ENTJ could be like, oh yeah, but I don't really like people like drain me or whatever. It's like, no, it's not necessarily that people drain you. It's if they get in the way of you getting things done, that's draining you.
Yeah.
But your focus, exactly. But your focus is still on the external world. And so you trying to get things done, that's your focus, while opposed to like an INTJ, although they still bring things out into fruition, their focus is the, what's going on in my mind? And it's like they build so much in here, but then they can't bring all of it into fruition.
Right.
And then we build a lot over here, but we don't take the time to build enough inside to bring out. So for every extrovert, we have to spend more time with ourselves so that we can have more substance to bring forward.
Yeah.
And then for every introvert, they have to spend less time with themselves so they can actually start bringing things into fruition.
That makes sense. I would say when I was, as like the process of learning how to better type, I've kind of gone away from asking about the energies of extrovert and introvert, and then just compare the other three, and then just see amongst the two which one is better, because it's really hard to differentiate, and people don't know themselves, or they want to stereotype themselves, like, I like to be alone, therefore I'm an introvert. Like, no, that's not how that works. And also, depending on the maturity of the person too, like, for ENFP, for example, I know a lot who are constantly, like, on the go and very extroverted and out there, and they kind of tend to be on a more immature level. But while a mature ENFP would probably be more, they would be okay with actually being alone, and I think that's common with extrovert types, that when they're finally okay with being alone, a lot of their non-dominant functions start developing.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. I do.
But
So you can't just throw me in a room with a bunch of people who believe in MBTI. Because I disagree with it. I don't disagree with it. Because I believe in it. I just believe that, well, I don't know. Like, okay, so what you were saying, it's kind of utilizing your strengths to lift your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right. That said, I believe you can also, like, in that way, work your personality out like a muscle.
Yeah.
So it's not as difficult to do it from that point forward. However, a lot of people believe it to be set in stone, and so, like, this is necessary to perform in this way in your personality. But I do believe that if you're actually to strain yourself in this area of your personality, you can't see my hands because I'm out of frame, but, like, in the difficult parts of your personality, the weaker parts of your personality, if you were to actually overexpose, I guess is a good way to put it, or just further expose than what you're comfortable with, like actual physiological muscle, you can strengthen it. And that's kind of the whole idea behind the communication of the Patrick Edward theory, which, again, theoretically, it's very similar to Myers-Briggs, but the goal of it is to show the communication of personality, which would be able to highlight personality disorders. It's kind of the goal of that alone. So it's very different. So when I explain, it seems very similar to Myers-Briggs, right? But that's what that's about. That's just where I fall on what you were saying. Is the way I feel like we're on the same page. It's just how you get there. We believe different things, but there's no evidence to support the way I believe.
It's all good, man.
that's why it's a theory.
Yeah, that is true. I think so. Are you, like, asking? Are you talking about, like, shadow functions, pretty much?
Yes.
Okay, so pretty much what you're saying is, like, besides the immediate four functions that each type is most represented by, we should work on the functions that we have least represented.
Yes.
Pretty much. Okay. I get why you would say that. I think the reason why, like, I would personally, like, disagree with that is because, first off, I feel like if you have gifts in these areas, then that's where you should focus on becoming the absolute best at, and then you should have someone else on your team who's gifted in the areas that you're weaker at, and they become the absolute best at that. Because if you're focused on everything, then you're focused on nothing.
Right.
And so once you're focusing so much on developing, like, it's already hard enough to develop your auxiliary function. Like, I've been developing mine for the past 2 years, and inevitably, if you're feeding the baby, or, well, your auxiliary function is not a baby, but if you're feeding the baby, then it's going to spill food, and then the dog's going to come and eat it. The dog, in this metaphor, would be the inferior function. So my TI has also been getting fed as I feed my auxiliary, and I think that's a lifelong journey to develop those functions, and you will always continue to grow better and better and better at that, and you become more well-rounded with those functions, and that's where your superpowers will come in. But if you try and, like, you already have limited food, if you're trying to give all of that food or distribute all of that food between 8 mouths instead of just those immediate 4, now all of them are going to be, like, malnutritioned pretty much. And that's why I think that it's best to focus on those immediate 4 because it's already hard enough to feed this limited food to those 4. And now it's like, oh, let's add 4 more. Let's just slap them right there.
Right.
And now you're very unhealthy because you have focused on areas that, honestly, if we're being like, as a Christian, I believe that God made us in these made us these personality types for a reason, and He wants you to develop the best out of your immediate functions, so that you can use them to be better in life for His glory, etc., etc. Exactly. And so if you just focus on the ones that are like out of that immediate function stack, then that could cause some sort of malnutrition or unhealthiness.
Right. I believe that. I do. So like, no one can be everything, and you have a lot of good information on like superpowers, which I think is really cool. And I believe that. So like, we're born with a set of preferred functions, right? We're born with primary functions, primary types. So when I say like work one out like a muscle, a lot of situations that involve depression or anxiety have a lot to do with the way you're perceiving information. Hi, Jamila. Have a lot to do with the way you're perceiving information.
Right.
And I mean, that's any kind of information. So the idea behind the just spitting out your gum. I have some for you too. If you're perceiving information incorrectly, so do you know what CBT is?
No.
It's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's used by therapists. It's one of the most used interventions concerning things like suicidal ideation or non-suicidal self-injury. Anything where there's a lot of incorrect thinking, negative thinking, or people focusing on the wrong things in interactions or perceiving things incorrectly. It's considered, when it's necessary, it's considered treating a personality disorder. So when working out different sides of your personality extensively, it's not meant long term. I wouldn't recommend you work out everything. I don't want you to be everything. Like, no one should be everything. Now, so again, I don't believe in ambiverts. If I did believe that, then I would warrant the existence of ambiverts, and those don't exist. But let's say they're perceiving information incorrectly, and that could be processed by, I believe it can be processed by a function. Now, if they're processing information incorrectly from a certain input, and we're able to work that out, exercise the other input or the preferred input, kind of like CBT. Change the way they think, change the way they perceive it, but in a way that applies to their personality directly, is kind of where I'm coming from. It's not meant for long term. It's like bodybuilding. Like, you don't want to live the lifestyle of a bodybuilder all your life, because you'll be lacking water, you'll be eating way too much protein, your liver and kidneys will be exhausted, and you'll probably die by like 45. That's what happens when you live as a bodybuilder. Like, bodybuilders don't live as bodybuilders. They work out, they get to a show, they win the show, and then they take time off, they put back on weight. Like, they don't look like that all the time, even though their Instagram would suggest otherwise. So that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that you, if this Patrick Edward theory takes off, that it be used to balance personality. I'm not asking for that at all. Yeah, I'm trying to see if it has any clinical potential at all. That's the purpose of it.
Got you.
It would be a type indicator, but it wouldn't be used for recreational use.
Yeah, that would make sense. You're pretty much just using the ideas of the cognitive functions to it's not necessarily being used for type development, but more as like type diagnosis for more clinical reasons.
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that would make sense for like the profession that you want to do. Jolene, do you have words?
Like, I already use Myers-Briggs for a lot of personal diagnosis of people. And like using the functions that they're already given through that typing to analyze like where a person is in their life, why they're making these choices, why they're getting upset. So like, I think with the Patrick Edward, you have that part too, especially when you said like with that crisis where they bounce between their beta and secondary, where they bounce between that. I can see that happening a lot with people with their non-dominant functions when they go through crisis, or why even they're acting the way they don't when they don't have those dominant functions right away. Like when if either thinking is non-dominant, you can tell that when the person hasn't fully developed that, how they can be like even more emotional, or in a way even more closed off, or they're completely opposite because they're just so emotional that it's become overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So I can see even using Myers-Briggs clinically.
I don't.
I know you don't.
That's all I'm going to say on that one. No, it has its place as well, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not really
It has its place.
focused in the clinical field anyway.
Me neither.
So I guess, I don't really have like much to say on that. But I think that's good. I honestly do think that it's good that you are finding the use for it. So yeah, I guess like when it comes to that, then I don't really have like much to say on it. Like I use Myers-Briggs for personal development. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think I would go into a clinic and try and like diagnose people using it, and then try and like maneuver. Even for my clients that I have through life coaching and everything, if they're dealing with like post-traumatic stress disorder or something, like I'm not gonna take on you. I'm not gonna like be like, okay, so through your personality type, you can do. No, that's where you need like actual help. That's where I send you to someone like Kyler. But when they are like healthy or at a good spot and they're just trying to like move ahead in life and everything and get a better sense of who they are and better themselves in that way, then that's when I'm like, I can definitely help you. And we teach you about your personality type in that way. So yeah, I'm definitely more of like a personal development type of usage, as opposed to, I'm gonna use this to sort of kind of like fix you in a way. And I think that's necessary. Like people like you were necessary even before people like me, because you can't become developed or whatever until you are already fixed. Like if you're already damaged and everything, you need to be fixed first before then you can become better.
Yeah.
So there's like steps that you have to take. Have you been listening?
Yeah,
Do you have anything to say? Do you have anything to say?
No.
Well, I don't know. Should we probably end it over here then? Does anyone have any last words?
I don't. I'm just grateful that you let me on your show again.
No problem, man. Do you have any last words?
I had an idea, and then I lost it because I was distracted.
Guys, can you guys guess her type? Or do you want to share the type with everyone?
Do you still have to guess?
I would have guessed
you have like
ENFP.
no.
You're not? You're
No.
ENTP?
Yeah, I have no
Really?
emotions. Yeah.
What?
I'm not an ENFP. I know you had like 2 options.
Oh, that is true. Any dominant.
My guess is that you're an ENFJ.
Yes.
I got that within like the first 2 seconds. Honestly, before I even met you and just like texting like in the group chat, I was just like ENFJ.
I see in the group chat, I figured that you had FI possibly, because I was texting, I put like a smiley face and everything, and she responds back like, "Hi, I'm Jolene." I'm like, all right, got you. And so I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. It's not necessarily that you have FI, it's just that your FE is tertiary. But that makes sense. That's good. That's cool.
Definitely a thinker.
Cool. All right. Well, do you have any words for anyone?
Oh, I just remembered my thought.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
When you're talking about as using it for life coaching and stuff, it's definitely encouraging when you're telling people about their type and they're like, that's exactly me. It's like, it's really encouraging to know that you're not alone and that what you're thinking or experiencing is normal.
Yes.
A lot of people are like, wait, that's okay? That's how I'm supposed to? You're just like, yeah, that's normal.
Yeah, it was actually very enlightening for me to like learn like, oh, I literally absorb other people's emotions because that's just the type of personality that I am. I literally, Jamila used to like, Denzel, why are you so nice? Why are you always smiling at me? Why I mean, like, good.
Oh.
And I used to wonder, Jamila, why does your face always look like? And why are you just this way? No, that's not how your face look. It's like, oh, okay, FE dominant, always smiling, pretty much always kind, jovial. FI dominant,
Kind and jovial.
not all the time. And so it's like, okay, well, now I know to help her become more of who she is, as long as she's okay with me becoming more of who I'm supposed to be. And it grants other people, it doesn't box you, it grants you permission to be who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And it grants other people permission to be who they are, and you accept them for who they are. So
It's a really big box.
it's
It's a very
huge.
big box. So when you're worried about being boxed in, it's a very big box.
Yeah, like there's no. I always talk about how, like, okay, Martin Luther King Jr., Oprah Winfrey, Professor Xavier, me, Nelson Mandela. Yes, you can see like similarities between them, but like, even Raymond Reddington, same similarities, but clearly we're not all like the same person. And even you, I would not call you Walt Disney, if we're being honest. But I could definitely see how Walt Disney would have the same type of mental processes as you do. And so, yes, it's a very big box.
Yeah.
And people are being boxed all the time. Are you right-handed or are you left-handed? Are you a boy or are you a girl? Are you dark or are you light? Or you, whatever the case may be. And so, don't be so butthurt about that. That's how I feel about it.
That's a good closing message. Don't be butthurt.
Don't be butthurt. And I think that's a good spot to end it. So you should just definitely let anyone know any last things.
Yes,
about
for
your
sure.
Psych Diner.
So
Close
we're
off.
going to be talking about a lot more than just personality in Psych Diner. So Psych Diner, and if you saw the other video, explains psychology as in the most applicable, basic way possible. And I'm actually writing an article right now about dealing with rejection. I wrote one about what forgiveness is. We're doing videos on positive and negative emotions, how they work together. So like a lot of stuff. We're even talking about personality, and Denzel's coming back on the show too.
Mm.
So if you guys are interested in that, or if you're not, doesn't matter, go and do this. Go to my website. It's psychdiner.com. That's PSYCHDINER.com. Right now we have an early access promotion going on where you can check out the first podcast and get notifications for when it launches, which is November 15th.
Nice.
Hopefully you see this before then, and we can get you in there.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, thanks for watching this podcast that wasn't really a podcast. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Jamila, say goodbye.
Goodbye.